So I'm Emily from Emily Bakes Cakes, and I thought I would demonstrate how to bake a cake today. So a couple of years ago, there was an article in the newspaper that talked about Kouing Amman pastries and said that there were so few of them being made in the United States, and one of the very few places that it was being made at was here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so my husband and I, after we read that article, we thought, oh, we need to go find that bakery and taste these amazing pastries. And so my husband worked downtown at the time, and so he did. He brought some home and we tasted them and we loved them. And so ever since then, we were trying to find all these different recipes of how to make them. And usually when you have them, they're just their own individual, like cupcake size pastry. But then my sister, a couple of years ago, she got this cookbook that is right here by Malgieri called The Modern Baker, and it makes it into a cake. And for me, that was a great relief, because trying to make all of them into these tiny little cupcakes that made such a mess because of all the caramelization of the sugar and the butter, and scrubbing out each individual cupcake tin was really a lot of work, and then also it was a lot of work to make them. And anyway, I like a lot of bang for my buck, so that's why I'm making two today, and also because I thought I would try out Members Mark Sam's Club butter and Kerrygold butter. And so this is obviously the more expensive butter because I think it's supposed to have more butter fat than, say, this. And so I'm very curious to see if there's any difference between the flavor of the two butters, but also I like just making two of these kind of cakes because they store well and they taste really good, and they are a lot of work and kind of fiddly, and so if you're making one, you might as well make two, at least for me and my family. So I have a 3/4 cup of warm water that I just got from the sink, and then you put in 2 and 1/4 teaspoon of yeast into it, and I'm just gonna kind of eyeball. That looks like a quarter. That looks like a quarter, and just kind of mix that around a little bit. Now, usually they say, oh, wait for the yeast to bubble, because then you know that it's alive and that it will rise on you. It won't not. And so you're just kind of dissolving it a little bit in there. So you can see that I'm just kind of dissolving it, making sure that the little individual flakes of the yeast, see, there was a big puddle or big pocket of them. All of them are wet. There we go. And then make sure there's not any non-wet ones. If you're using fresh yeast, I don't know, you could probably look up a conversion of how that works, but I've never actually used fresh yeast before, but I've read a lot of cookbooks that use it. So anyway, so we put that in. And then usually if you want to wait for bubbles, just to make sure, like if it's been a long time since you've used your yeast and you don't know if it's still alive, or you want to make sure that you didn't get your water too hot, then you can just wait a minute and see if it starts multiplying. And you can see in this one, like they all kind of like gravitate to each other a little bit. So, okay, so you can see that there's the little bubbles in there. Now what we're going to do is we add 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'm just eyeballing that because I did 4 tablespoons, so mix that in there. Make sure it's not too hot either, otherwise it might kill your yeast. And then we add 2 cups of flour to each one. Oh, that's my sugar. And 1 teaspoon of salt. So this is when it turns out well, it's so super tasty. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of times where it has not turned out as well as I had hoped, where the caramelization didn't work very well, or got burnt before the inside got cooked. And anyway, so this is, but when it works out well and you have the bread, the pastry, with the sugar and the butter, and it just is an amazing combination, then that is super great. Now some people like to mix it from the start with their hands. I am not a fan of getting the dough all over my hands because I don't like that feeling very much. And also I hate the waste of it. So now you don't want to overwork it. You're not trying to build the gluten here at all. You were just trying to mix it all together. So, and this as well. Mix this too. Then after we get both of these mixed, we'll put saran wrap on the top and put it in the fridge and let it rest and raise for 30 minutes. And then we'll see what happens next, which is when we smash the butter in between the layers. And it all is just this time-consuming process that is pretty messy. So just give it a turn, make sure to get all the pieces together. Oops. And that was the bell signaling we're done for now. Okay, so our dough is done. You can see that it's risen. It's kind of a little bit puffy, okay? But, so it's just the perfect amount to make one cake. So I have my 2 butters here. Now, what you're gonna do is you're supposed to pound out the butter. So we're going to end up rolling out the dough into a rectangle, but we need the butter to fill up 2/3 of the dough. So we take this and we're going to pound it out. I just have a strip of parchment that is left over from cutting. And I know they want you to cut it in a circle, but that's such a pain and it wastes too much parchment. So I just always do squares instead, or rectangles, I guess. And it's good enough usually to keep it from sticking. So I have the butter, and it says in the recipe you could use up to 1/4 cup of flour for this process right here. However, that's what it's going to be. It's a pounding out and a rolling out of the butter, and it's supposed to be super, super soft. So I'm going to pound this out, and then we'll turn it back on again after we see. Okay, so you can see I've kind of got it pounded out. The purpose of the flour is just to keep it from sticking, the butter sticking to the cutting or to the rolling pin. And you just want it kind of thin. It's supposed to be the same temperature as the dough, so that, see, this is what happens if you don't use enough flour. So now that we've got these chunks, and I mean, if you watch other people, they can do it like really well. So what we're going to do is we need to scatter about 1/4 cup of sugar. So you're going to use about 1 cup of sugar per cake. So there's about 1/4 cup of sugar. Okay, so I'm going to take this out, scrape it out with this. I don't like it going on my nails. Okay, so here it is. All right, so trying to make it into a rectangle. There we go. All right. So we're trying to make it into a rectangle that is about 8 inches by 12 inches. So I'm going to get out my ruler. It's not there because I have children who take my rulers, but I do have a tape measure. Okay, so what we're going to do, so we're rolling it in the sugar, and that's what helps give it that caramelization in every single layer, and it's really kind of an amazing thing. Okay, so let's see where we're at right now. Let's see. Okay, so it's supposed to be 8 inches by 12 inches. So it's about an inch too long or too thick right there. So if we just kind of squish it like that, just kind of make it nice and squished. Okay, let's see. Is that about 8 inches? Yeah, it's about 8 inches. And let's see, is this 12? It's about 13. So, all right, just squish it up a little bit. Okay, so there we reached that. We just have, instead of using flour, remember we're using the sugar. Okay, so now what we do is we're putting our 2 cubes of butter. Let's see, I need to break this off here. Maybe put it right here and right here. Okay, and get our other bits of butter. So you can see it's probably about the same thickness as the dough itself, maybe a little bit thicker. Okay, we just kind of stick these there. So we're covering up about 2/3 of this, and this is with the Sam's Club Members Mark butter. Okay, so now what we're going to do is leave this top third unbuttered. Then we fold this. Okay, well, let's gather up some of this sugar and kind of put it right there, maybe. Okay, and then fold it up over the middle section. Okay, so now we have these 3 layers of dough here. All right, let's get our rolling pin, and we're going to put another 1/4 cup of sugar down here. Okay, put it on the top as well, so we're about at a 1/2 cup of sugar. Okay, turn it so that the short end is facing you. Okay, gently press it so that it gets thinner. Okay, we're rolling it back out again. And you're kind of doing it as softly as you can because the butter can rip through, and then you got a problem. Okay, so you're trying to roll it back into an 8-inch by 12-inch rectangle. Okay, there you go. Let's see, I think that looks, and honestly, like, it's okay if it's not exactly perfect. I don't know if you've gathered my style is a little bit, whatever works is fine. Okay, so now we have this. Okay, now gently press, let's see, now we've rolled it back into this, so we need to fold it. I'm going to put a little bit of sugar in this. Okay, get a little bit of sugar on the whole thing because I didn't. Okay, now we fold it back again like that. Okay, so you can see, since you're kind of making a mess, that you might as well make 2. Okay, now we folded it back up, and now we're supposed to refrigerate it for an hour. Wrap it up in dough, or wrap it up in plastic wrap. Wrap it up in dough, that's silly. Okay, now, so this is our Kerrygold butter, and we're going to pound it one at a time. Rinse my hands off from the sugar. So I'm doing the Kerrygold butter. Hi, Vivi. One of my daughters just came up from downstairs. So it's so much yellower than the other butter, and I think that's really interesting.
Wait, this is butter?
It is butter. Okay, so I pounded out my Kerrygold butter, and as you can see, I've kind of made it, I mean, it's a little bit thicker here. And the point is that it needs to be cool enough that it's staying firm when you roll it out, and it's not going to squish. Like this is not making cinnamon rolls. That's not what we're doing here. And so you need to pick this up and put this in the fridge for an hour. Okay, so we have our pile of sugar. Let's kind of roll out our dough again. Our dough from here. Ew, forgot. Okay. Here, let's see how it's doing. Okay. So put that there. Flip it over. Makes it easy. So the one thing with working with the sugar like this is because I've sometimes made these and put it in overnight, and the sugar, it really turns watery, or it turns into a glaze actually, where and you know that, like, that's the difference between working with it as the sugar versus the flour, is that the longer it holds, like the more chance it has to create that mixture of like a watery, sugary thing. And and it's good when it's baked because then it becomes a good caramel, but it can be kind of a mess. And so when I put these in the fridge overnight, if I haven't had them on a plate or a tray, then they have leaked out. Okay, so let's see, according to our little thing, let's see if this is 8. Oh, once again, I went to 9. Well, it's almost 8, and then let's see, and then this is a little bit, I just do it a little bit too much each time. For me, the first one is the most important because that's when we're doing the butter. Okay, so now I'll get my butter, and this one, as you can see, I kind of made it a little too thin right there, and so I'll put this here, and I'll put this, let's see, maybe fold this up a little bit right there. So we have a little bit extra butter right there. Okay, maybe I'll put a little bit of butter on here, even though the recipe doesn't specifically say that. I think it's always kind of good to have a little bit of butter there, and maybe that's why I have that happen. Okay, there we go. So now, if I was really good at math, I'd probably be able to tell you how many layers that makes when you fold it over and fold it over again. Okay, so put this out, and and so that's why it says a cup for the for how much sugar you use, but it all just kind of pinch it right here. My daughters tell me I need to pinch it, but really you don't. Okay, so depends on what's the easiest way for you to roll this back out. So you're trying to roll it back out again, remember. So far the butters have behaved similarly. They haven't seemed very different at all. So the reason why I'm curious is because, and I am using salted butter too. So that makes a difference because I kind of like that interplay between the sweet and the salty. Otherwise it gets a little too sweet for me. When I've made croissants before, which, you know, has always kind of been like, ended up in a buttery disaster in my oven, I used salted butter, and it was way too salty because I had used salted butter, and then I put the salt in, and then I had put the ham and cheese, and it was very, very salty. So, all right, let's have more sugar here. Okay, especially where there's about to be some butter that came through. Okay, so we fold this like that. Oh, do you see the butter right there? And then the butter right here. Okay. And then scrape up some more. Okay. So that was the first time we did it, and now we need to roll it out one more time. because we are trying to fit these, and I have 9-inch cake pans. So for me, it's easier to roll it out like this. And then after we roll this out this last time, then we put it in the fridge for the half an hour. And after that, we take it back out and we roll it out again. So you can kind of see, I don't know if my video is very good, but you can see the little butter chunks. See right there, it's threatening to break out. That's the problem with using sugar instead of flour as the dry ingredient to roll this out on, because it is so much more abrasive, and so it creates that abrasion that I don't know how good that is. Okay, so let's see, we'll put this like this and this like this, and honestly it doesn't matter how it all comes together as long as you do a certain number of rolls. So now, let's see, did I put that in there tight enough? Alright, so now I'll wrap this up and then we'll come back in an hour. Okay, so it's been in for almost half hour, and you can kind of see what I was talking about. If you look right there, you can see the liquid. So what we're going to do is turn that out onto the sugared surface, and I'm going to sprinkle the dough with about another 1/4 cup of sugar. Okay, I'm going to roll this out. There we go. You can kind of see it smearing. It squishes out a little bit of the sugary juice that has been in the inside, is what is happening. Okay, all right, now we fold it up. So you kind of see it's ripping a little bit right there, but that's okay because it's all good. Okay, bring it back around again. Okay, now you just bring it here, and we're just supposed to let it rest for 10 minutes on the counter. Okay, I'm gonna kind of just sprinkle a little bit of this sugary stuff on there. Okay, I need to sprinkle some more sugar. I'll get out the other one. So this one is our Members Mark Sam's Club sugar. So this is one of the reasons why I said I put it in the freezer, because I wanted it to get a little bit firmer. But this is one of the reasons why I said it's kind of a mess to make, because like, even though I'm making this, I still have to do dinner and arrange for kids to get picked up and all of that kind of stuff. So that's why I said it's kind of a hassle to make. I mean, if you just had only to worry about making this, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Okay, so, but having my whole counter space be taken up with the sugariness is kind of a pain. Okay, so let's roll it out. There we go. So we're trying to make it 8 inches across. This is the Land O'Lakes one. And up we go. Ew. Don't want to touch the flip there. Okay, so now fold that there. We'll fold this here. And in general, this one's looking pretty good. Okay. So, and the next step, after we let these rest for 10 minutes, and I'll set the timer for 10 minutes, is that they are supposed to be then rolled into circles, and we'll put them in the pan. So we will come back in 10 minutes.
My name is
So it's been about 10 to 15 minutes, and back with these again. I guess I should start with my other one that I did first. So this is the pan that I'm going to try and roll it out to fit in, and so it's already pretty much the length. I just have to get it a little bit wider. So I need to put about a 1/4 cup of sugar on there and just kind of roll it out a little bit. And I don't know how exactly they expect real people to roll this into a circle, like we're shaping it into a circle, but I mean, pretty much you're rolling it out, and it says in the recipe like to trim it, but here's what I'll tell you, that I wouldn't trim any of it, and they said don't, waste too much of it or whatever, and I thought I would not cut off any of it. You just kind of squish it in, right? Because this is your very expensive, time-consuming kind of a pastry thing that you just made. And so now once it's in the pan, it's supposed to have plastic wrap, and it's supposed to puff slightly over the course of about 2 hours before you bake it. But at least now you can kind of clean up your kitchen. So that always feels nice, right? To be able to clean up the sugariness. So this is my Sam's Club one, my Members Mark butter, and this is my Land O'Lakes butter. I have to say, just on the rolling out, maybe I did make the doughs differently. I don't know. But this one seems like it looks a lot better and is a lot better. So let's see. And this is just greased with Pam. You're supposed to use butter, but I was doing expediency's sake. Okay, so do this like this. I'm just gonna pat it in there. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so now it said to kind of sprinkle the sugar on top that we have, right? Because this is the sugar we've been using, and we'll sprinkle it on top, and scatter the remaining sugar. Now I'm going to put plastic wrap on it and then puff it up. This is also the point at which I have sometimes just covered it and put it in the fridge overnight and then cooked it in the morning. It does take an hour to cook at 350 degrees. And like I said, with the caramelization process, if it starts getting too brown, then you're supposed to turn the temperature down to 300 and just keep watching it for like the last 20 minutes. So you can do that. I have a convection oven now that I've never made it with a convection one before. So I'm excited to see what that does, like how that works with it. And I don't know, I think I might probably only let it raise for like an hour or so, just because I don't want to eat this like at 10 o'clock tonight. And so instead we're going to, maybe I'll put one in, I'll put them both in, and so that we can do the taste test and see which one tastes better, if there is a difference. Okay, so here are the two cakes. They bubbled over, made a huge mess, but luckily my husband was there to clean it up. And we're going to wait 5 minutes, and then we are going to turn them out and put them on the cooling rack. So they smell amazing after you get rid of the terrible burned sugar and butter smell on the bottom of the oven. Alright, so this is my Kerrygold butter, and this is my Sam's Club butter one. And it's been 5 minutes, and it kind of need to let it cool down a minute. Oh, look, uh-oh. Some of it came off the bottom of the pan. And you got the caramel on there. And I actually probably need to put that on a piece of parchment paper so that it will not stick to the wire. There we go. Okay. So put this like this, like that. Like these awesome boards my daughter Katie made for me. There we go. Oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Okay. All right. So this one is done. And I kind of had gone around and loosened up the sides just because of the caramel situation. And let's see how this one comes out. If it has the same struggle as the other one. I can feel it kind of, the caramely is sticking right there. And we had a couple spots right there and right here. Okay. Let's take this off. You can see it's definitely caramely. There we go. Let's see, probably should get another piece of parchment just to lay right there so that it doesn't stick. So let's pull this over just a little bit. There we go. And we will put this one here. Let's see how it goes. There we go. Okay. So now we have finished with these, and I'm going to cool them completely before we cut into them. So we kind of let the caramel harden up on the bottom, and so it has a nice crispness to it, and also so the butter, you know, kind of reabsorbs into everything, but, you know, it doesn't take that long. Anyway, we'll check back when we cut it, and we'll have the taste test. Okay, so we cut it in and we are gonna do the taste test now. You can see it's not fully cooled off yet, but you can see it's pretty nice and caramely on the inside. That one is the Sam's Club butter, and this is the Kerrygold butter. And so it's interesting the difference between the two and how they look. So, all right, I'll have my husband taste it because he is Mr. Intensive Super Taster. And we'll have everyone taste it and we'll see what it tastes like. Okay, so which one did you like the most?
So this one, when you have traditional Kouing Amman, you have it's like the trifecta of desserts because the outer crust and bottom forms a caramel piece. That's the first flavor. It's like a caramel flaky piece. Then you have the surrounding layers, which is like a flaky croissant, but since it has all of the extra butter and sugar, then it just is extra magic. And then in the core of, to me, a properly done Kouing Amman, you've got a molten core where butter and flour and sugar come together in a bubbly perfection that forms a molten custard that's amazing. So this one, I don't know which is which at this point, has more of a layered texture with a little bit of that molten core kind of thing. And this one you can see didn't rise as much, and then also is mainly made up more of just that kind of molten-y, custardy. So I don't know which is which, but my preference,
the one you liked was the
Kerrygold.
Kerrygold.
Is the one that has a little bit more of the texture, which apparently is the more expensive one.
Yeah.
So yay me for having super tastes.
Everyone did too.